Oh, well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show. Delighted to be joined still by the Freds. How are we doing, boys?
All right, thank you, Andrew. Yeah,
Very
we're
well,
fine.
thank you.
We're
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
good. Look, I want to talk about the cancellations. We spoke previously about how when you started in the industry, you had to comply with all those rules and you had to wear those golden nappies
yeah,
and be a good boy in the TV studios and read out only the negative messages
yeah,
about coming out and being gay rather than the positive message you could have done.
yeah.
You talked very recently in your Metro interview just a few days ago, still feeling cancelled in this industry about raising the issues about COVID and so on and so forth. First of all, why and how did this become important to you? And secondly, talk to me about the effects it's had as a result of your speaking out.
Right. Should I go? Yeah, go on. Well, we didn't think we were speaking out. We thought we were living in a country where we could share an opinion. And the opinion was maybe people should be allowed to be vaccinated or not, depending on their choice. We had the abortion thing, my body, my choice. And then literally within a year, apparently my body, my choice, it becomes your body, my
No,
body,
your choice.
body, your choice. Yeah. So we thought that was weird. We thought, the lockdowns just didn't make any sense. They just made no sense. Well, there was no common sense involved. You're closing down gyms, health centers, churches, but you're leaving open,
McDonald's, I think, was
yeah,
open,
yeah,
wasn't
fast food.
it? Yeah.
Whole thing that made no sense to me. And I just we were surprised when everybody started getting really upset with us. We were like, well, we've actually just talked about civil liberties. We didn't say, you must not get vaccinated. Just if you want to get vaccinated, I don't care. Want to wear a mask? Knock yourself out. I don't care. But I'm not doing it. That was our position, and people got very, very upset. We were accused of killing people because we weren't wearing masks. And also, the 2 meter limit. Fauci's now admitted that he just made that up on the spot. That masks aren't effective, and the vaccine was neither safe nor effective. And so, I think what was really pissed people off is that we didn't know we were right, but we've been proven to
Also,
be right.
also, what we felt was if it was as dangerous and deadly as they claimed it was, there would be special bins supplied by the state for the disposal of old masks. They would be very, very specific about the masks that do work. They wouldn't allow people just to walk around with a homemade mask made out of a sock. It just struck us that there were so many inconsistencies in this
Yeah, well, yeah.
that it just didn't hang together as a story. And then, of course, you've got a whole slew of politicians who 10 years ago we wouldn't have trusted with a £5 note. Suddenly we trust them implicitly with medical information. And I just thought, really? Boris Johnson telling me what to do with a next slide, please. Really?
Yeah.
It didn't,
Just didn't feel right.
it didn't feel right. It wasn't, what I've said before is you don't have to be a cordon bleu chef to know when the fish is off.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just use your common sense. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that's all we did. We were never anti-vax. I think I got COVID or what SARS-CoV-2, whatever it was. I think I had that because it was just felt like a really heavy flu. That's what it felt like. And I was in hospital I fell over in the bath, banged my head. I was in hospital for 2 days. But interestingly enough, when I was about to be discharged, the consultant nurse came in who was about mid-20s, I would think. And I just to see what the situation was like and how informed she was, I said, have you ever heard of ivermectin? And she said, can you spell it? Which I thought that was a bit of a clue. Okay, so I spelt it. She flipped open her phone and obviously Googled it, looked at the information for maybe 5 seconds, flipped it shut and walked out. That was it. So my impression then was that she wasn't interested and didn't know what it was.
I think this sort of intolerance and this binary thinking, you're with us or against us. I think that started during Brexit, when I suddenly realized that people are just so rude to each other. You couldn't say to someone, actually, I'd rather leave. Suddenly you were a gammon. If you wanted to stay, you were a Ramona. There wasn't this,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's your opinion. Okay, cool. There was none of that.
And
There
it's
was
so
this
sad, isn't
really
it? Because
aggressive.
we want to have a situation where you should be able to question everything. And it was the father of PR, Edward Bernays. He said that if you want to sell anything to the general public, fear is the biggest human emotion. And certainly this thing about you're being selfish, you're going to kill Granny if you don't have those sort of things. What's that about?
I know. Do you remember the post the posters at bus stops? Look him in the eyes.
Yes.
Look him in the eye. It was very fascistic in a funny kind of way. And there was a guy that we know, and he's retired. He's a friend of our accountant's, actually. He lives next door. And he was so petrified by the news and by the way it was sold. He hasn't been out of his house at that time for about a year. Petrified. I mean, it's not fair, and it's unkind, you know. So I watched today some stuff about Dr. Hillary, what is his name?
Jones, yes. Yeah.
Talking about wearing masks if you go swimming. And, you know, you just...
Or people in their cars by themselves.
On their own.
I know.
Somebody says like wearing a condom on your own in bed.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, there you go. There's another show for you.
There's another show for you.
There's an idea.
There's an idea.
But the problem is, we're laughing about it now, but actually the consequences of your speaking out were devastating. Talk me through some of those.
Well, what was...
We lost a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
what's weird is that we were sort of used to it, because just winding right back, when we went to our first Brits, which was 92.
92, yeah.
We were number one in the UK with an album and single. We were number one in America with I'm Too Sexy, and we were number one in about 40 countries and top 10 in about 100 or something. It was so we were clearly the breakout band, you know, and the Brit Awards ignored us completely. And we then realized, okay, this is what this is like. If you're not part of the club, you're just not.
Yeah.
You know, so we weren't part of the club.
That's kind of when it started, right?
Yeah, and then we noticed it bit by bit. Other time we did a deal in 2000 with a European label, and we had a lot of success in Europe, and did do some very big shows, etc. And the UK press still wouldn't leave it alone. They just wanted to have a go the whole time, and it's kind of weird. I mean, when I got divorced, the press reported that I'd left my Fulham mansion and I was holed up in a Fulham cottage. Well, I had never had a Fulham mansion.
And it wasn't a cottage.
And I didn't have a cottage either. I just had... And it was weird. That's just how they like to play it. And so when they came after us, it wasn't really a surprise. We'd had it before. Yeah, when Richard's partner was very, very ill with cancer, they were shouting, "Is he dead yet?" through Richard's letterbox.
Through the letterbox, yeah.
You know, so this wasn't new territory for us. So when they came after us, we were pretty prepared for it. Really, we not prepared, but we used to. We'd had it before.
Yeah,
but it still hurts, and it goes back to this whole mental health thing and the sort of coping mechanism.
It does.
When people, and it's worse, and it's death threats. It's you're not just about you and shouting things out, but the horrible thing when you were going through that grief with losing your partner and so on and so forth, and it's appalling, absolutely despicable, and it's important to speak behind all these people, behind the superstar brazen characters, if you like. There's some real human emotions.
Yeah, I think exactly. There's a lady called Julia Kuttner who was working for the Star, and she wanted an interview, and and Stuart was still alive then, but very, very poorly. And I said, well, we'll do an interview, but I want it to be the basic tenor of the interview to be living with AIDS, not dying from it. She said, okay, that's fine. So we met her at the Gore Hotel, and Stuart tried to make himself, he was very thin and had lost a lot of weight on his face, tried to put makeup on to make it look a bit better. We met at the Gore Hotel, and that was it. And then I went off a few days later to do some promo, and I got home and Stuart was crying in the bedroom. And I thought, well, what on earth is it? And he had read the paper. And she had ignored completely, absolutely everything we'd said. And so my problem with that is it's when they hurt people, as you say, when they hurt people around you. I don't mind being a target. We ask for it. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But don't start coming after our wives and partners and friends and all that. That is completely
And
out of
and you're so right. The more we can call people out about that sort of stuff and just remember on that sort of thing. But it's not just the words, isn't it? I mean, you've been physically attacked a number of times.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
We got beaten up in
Moscow.
and that was to do. What happened was still out east a little bit. The gay thing isn't always that well received. So we had been, yeah. So we had been doing some. We were doing a private party in Moscow for one of these oligarch guys, and the next day we were invited to a march or a protest. It was actually told. We were told it was a
tattoo.
Yeah,
a band playing
like a fete.
Parade.
A fete.
Yeah, the parade. Hurrah! That sounds good.
Yeah,
Let's get those golden nappies out.
Exactly. So it's all very, very friendly.
Yeah.
So the guy who was looking after us said, "Look, jump in the truck, and we'll drop me and my wife and the kids. We're going down there with you." So Rich and I get out one of those SUVs, and it's a sliding door. We get out, and suddenly the press are everywhere, and they spot us. So all the cameras come towards us, and you've had these sort of neo-Nazi guys. They've got the masks on because it's an anti-HIV AIDS thing they're doing.
I thought it was anti-pollution.
Yeah, because they believed that the AIDS HIV thing, the AIDS thing was airborne. They thought it was airborne. So they had these masks on and all this sort of weird kind of almost Russian folk singing, and they were very aggressive. And so they got really upset when the cameras sort of left them and then came over to us. And if it's still online, you can still see it. This guy comes from behind Richard and clumps him. And there's loads of other stuff that's not on there. The police were knocking us about and all this sort of thing. And we played in Russia before. You do not fight back. You'll be in the back of a truck and they'll beat you the hell out of you.
Yeah.
So you just grab your stuff and you leg it. And that's
what we did.
And that's what we did. And the guy looking after us eventually caught up with us. He was lovely, and he said, "Oh, there's a friend of mine's got a restaurant, and they're closed, but they're going to open it up for you, and we'll hide at the back." And because we were still being chased, there's still people running around
up the street.
Looking. So
Benny Hill.
we hid at the back of this restaurant. Went till it all quietened down, and then he went to our hotel rooms, got all our stuff, came back, and then we got a blacked out car and went to the airport.
We had to phone. I remember having to phone Mum from the airport because what I didn't want, it was all covered by CNN.
You'd seen it on the airport.
Yeah, we'd seen it on TV, and I didn't want Mum to see it on the TV first.
Right.
Otherwise, she would have freaked.
Just freak out, man.
So I had to phone her from the airport, and I didn't really feel safe until the wheels were up after we took off. Really, because all the time the plane's on the ground, they could still come in. So it wasn't until the plane took off I thought, oh, okay, we're kind of
it's all right. But we had to after that we had some other shows in the Baltics, and we had to take some our own security, because if you have a security over there, you don't know where their allegiances lie. So we took our own, and we still had some problems then. And these guys were very handy. But we did this one show. We'd been to the Baltics, and then we were playing in Poland.
Right.
And we're doing this festival. And the guy comes to the dressing room. He said, "It's a bit feisty out there." Oh, all right, okay, yeah. And we've been playing. We played all through the punk period, and we've seen it. It didn't really bother us. And these guys, these really big sort of Russian ex-military guys, they came up and they said, "There's some very nasty people in this audience. Once you've done your show, would you mind if we jumped down in there and had a bit of fun with them?" So, so I said, "Once we've done our show, we don't care, man. Do what you want." So we did the show. And these guys, they're doing this while we're playing
in the front row.
Yeah, doing all the cutting stuff, all this stuff. And we just did a short set with like 20, 30 minutes, got off. And we were told the next day that these military guys jumped into the audience and just hammered these neo-Nazi guys.
Yeah.
And we got that attention for a while. But what was weird, the far left and the far right, they both thought it was hilarious.
It's what makes me laugh when you talk about reform a far right. Or restore the far right. We've seen the far right. Yeah. Believe me, these two people are not far right.
Yes.
The real far right,
scary,
like the Azov Brigade in Ukraine, these are scary people.
Yeah.
And so learn, when you're using those expressions, understand what you're saying and understand what it is. I can't stand.
And also the biggest problem is this, isn't it? It's a label. Firstly, I hate labels anyway, because but it's a label which is used to shut down debate.
Exactly.
It is
It is.
completely.
It's like fascist or racist or whatever, homophobe,
Oh Lord,
Islamophobe. It's all designed just to shut you up,
yeah.
basically.
I
And
mean,
you have to,
what we need is that environment. We've spoken about this beforehand, where you can talk about things. Jaw, not war. Let's have different views. I try on this show, and I mean I do traditional media as well, but you get more chance when you get the longer shows. Get people with different views, which are not expressed elsewhere. You can get them to unpack it themselves, so it's not misrepresented, but also challenge it so people understand what people are actually saying.
But
I agree.
I agree with you, and
Yeah,
I think that's why people's motives in terms of the way they vote has got so binary and so uninformed in a way, because they're not informed by some of the big TV shows on BBC that I grew up with, like Panorama and Newsnight, have all gone.
Yeah.
There's actually no way of accessing unbiased news, particularly on the BBC. And it's this now. It's the internet and social media.
that's why they don't want it.
And that's why X is being threatened by the EU, because it's saying things they don't want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just extraordinary. I mean, they used to say it's always attributed to Mark Twain, isn't it? If you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. If you read them, you're misinformed. And you look at that basis, as never has it been so true about sort of we're swimming in a sea of disinformation and misinformation.
Well,
And I always encourage people, look, get your sources for news sources from as many different places as possible, because somewhere between that is the truth.
Exactly.
News in the middle.
Yeah.
Yes, going back to AI, isn't it? Because sometimes I don't know what I'm looking at.
No.
You go,
Any doubt, you just have to
is
look at it,
this?
yeah.
You're staring at it, you play it back. You
But
go,
also, it's we're watching Douglas Murray the other day, and he's right when he says it's the complete absence of trust in almost every area of life now. Now, when I was a kid, I bought the very first copy of The Independent when it first came out, and it's a broadsheet paper, and it had some really, really good writers in it. I had a Middle East correspondent whose name I cannot remember, but he clearly knew what he was doing and what he was talking about. And it was a newspaper full of information. Right. And then it became a, what do they call it? Like
tabloid.
A tabloid. Mm-hmm. And now it's just the eye. And it's just...
is that what it is now?
It's just the eye.
Yeah, it's just the eye. They've cut everything, including the letters.
Exactly. And also...
So the eye paper was The Independent?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Well, I did a lot of stuff for them on their online stuff. They were brilliant people, where they did some of the very first ones where I was brokering the rights for the Press Association, giving them video, because a lot of newspapers are basically becoming broadcasters as well. But what's important, you do have some great journalists. You make a fantastic point. I always say, look, trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. Yeah. And trust in the media, trust in politicians, trust in the police is probably at an all-time low.
I agree. In fact, going back to The Independent, when it first came out, there was a magazine that came with it every Sunday.
Yes.
The Independent magazine. And it was only black and white. I don't really remember this. It was always black and white. And there were they'd made a decision to have that two things would never be included: travel and cooking.
Did they?
Right.
No travel and no cooking. So it was all news and arts and all that. And it was great. It was when people actually seemed to be concerned about transmitting information, and now it's such a bung fight.
Well, you've got these sort of arrangement. You've got Trump derangement syndrome, Farage derangement, and Starmer derangement syndrome to a degree. Yeah. People can't seem to focus off these people.
No,
it's mad.
And what are your views on those three?
I think Trump is not a Nazi. That's the first thing I'll say. I know I've read about Nazis. He's definitely not a Nazi. I think Starmer is definitely mentally ill. And I think, who was the other one?
Farage.
I think Farage.
Oh, that's show business for you.
Yeah. I think he's more frit than he would care to admit.
Yeah, I don't think you can call Starmer mentally ill.
Can I not?
No, I don't think that's a good idea.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I'm not a doctor, but that's not.
I love the conversation on free speech, and your brother says you can't say that.
Well, I'm not sure. Well, we don't have any facts, do we? Apart from the
fact I do, and you're right. We need to have some limitations within the law. You need to make sure that defamation laws are in place. You need to make sure that you don't incite a riot and so on and so forth. Where do you stand on where the line is in free speech?
Well, I don't think
there is no such thing as free speech, is there?
No,
actually.
I think if you run into it, like you were saying, run into a cinema and shout fire. That's not free speech. That's just creating chaos.
Yeah.
Openly hating people on the street, inciting violence. That's not really free. So I think advocating the death of people at a music festival, I don't think that's free speech. I think you're just abusing the free speech platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Personally,
I agree.
But I think, I mean, the trouble is now, as you said, I mean, we've just fallen in for it. We're just literally talking about people shutting down conversations because of their name calling, and we've just been name calling. So,
But we're not shutting down conversation, though.
no, we're not. That's true.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay to talk to Bob Villan at the Glen.
Yes.
It's okay to call that out. I think it's okay to say there was a time when music was a unifying force and it was about love and tolerance and all that, and now it's been turned into a kind of hate fest by people like Bob Villan. So you can say that, and you can say I personally hate it and I think he's rubbish. I can say that. That's my opinion.
That's true.
So I think that, but in terms of what Fred was saying, he's absolutely right. If you go out on the street and start shouting, although I was just about to say anti-Semitic stuff, but we are tolerating that in this country way more than, I don't even know what's going on, where we have anti-Semitic street demonstrations and all that. It's completely odd to me.
It's the leafleting in Brighton recently. Wasn't there leafleting going on at people's doors?
Yes, they're going door to door.
Yeah,
I know that, and they were getting names, and this is exactly that sort of stuff. And they turn around and say that they were Jew hunting, effectively.
That's right. Yes,
because they're turning around and say, "Well, look, we've got the leaflets. Can we give you this leaflet about Palestine or whatever?" And whatever people's views are, they would then take a record of whether they took the leaflet or whether they said they're not interested or we don't know. And people were following them with a camera crew, weren't they? And saying, "Okay, look, you're effectively Jew hunting."
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I know.
That's not cool.
Have you seen?
It's certainly not good, but and I think there's the balance. We talk about freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequences. So things like the defamation law, things like the criminal law need to be put in place. But you've got things where it's Descartes who said, "Look, I think, therefore I am." In the UK, we've got the situation where I think, therefore I am arrested, and that's got to be wrong.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
It is.
I agree.
Yes,
it's a very strange transition that's happened in the last 20 years in the UK, whereas it never crossed my mind ever at all to be racist, to worry about what I thought, to be anti-Semitic, all these things. It never crossed my mind. And we used to go out on the bikes when we were kids, and Mum and Dad never worried, and the door was left open, but that's all gone. It's all gone, and I think it's been chipped away at incrementally over the last 20 years. The thing about Restore that's interesting to me is I think he's saying, Rupert Lowe is saying stuff that Farage doesn't have the will to say. That's my feeling.
It's quite interesting, though. I'm quite enjoying the pantomime.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pantomime.
Oh, no, you're not. Where's your career? Behind you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
but you mentioned Ben Habib beforehand. I know both Ben and Rupert and Nigel. I've met all of them, and people are sort of turning around and say, well, what's happening with all these parties is you're fragmenting the so-called people who might vote on the right of politics, and that effectively means it's a wide open door for Starmer, however mentally challenged you may or may not think he might be. Absolutely, but you're leaving the door open for him. What's your view on uniting those who might be on the right-hand side of politics?
I think it's a really good idea that if these people could work together. My problem is I think there are egos, such egos involved here that I can't see it ever. I can see Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe possibly working together in a more coordinated and official way. I can't see Farage getting he certainly would never work with Rupert Lowe, and Rupert Lowe would never work with him after what went on.
We say that, but politics. I mean, look at the Wahhawi. How do you pronounce that?
Zahawi.
Zahawi, yes.
I wouldn't have guessed him going to reform, but there he is.
Yeah.
So I think these people will kiss and make up if they think they can.
Yeah.
Well, this is the problem. I mean, they've been on my show. I put it to Ben. He in fact launched Advance UK at 7:30 on that day on the very Andrew Eborn Show. We pressed the button. He did all that. Watched his developments and so on and so forth. And I put to him, well, if it means you're going to get together in order to win, would you do it? And at that stage, with Reform, it was definitely no. He's very keen to get together with Rupert and has put that out publicly. But so far, Rupert has resisted his advances.
I don't understand that. I just don't understand that, because I know the lady that works closely with Ben, and I said, "Is it true that?"
Floss.
And she's Floss.
Yes, yeah,
And
there we go.
yeah, she said, yes, it is true. We haven't heard a word.
Weird.
Why is
Well, he's
that?
publicly said, he's publicly turned around. Ben's put out a very public thing. He did it on this show. I basically have seen things. I saw Rupert very recently as well,
Right.
and Rupert has basically said, well, they're welcome to come over to us, but so far the discussions of a merger haven't happened. And what's interesting is that Restore was basically a movement.
Yes.
It's been a movement rather than a political party, and Ben always jokes that the only movement he has is after breakfast. That's what he keeps saying.
Right.
Every time he'll do that line all the time. It's like, I'm too sexy. He'll do that. Get the clicker out.
Right, exactly.
But the reality is that he said to people, you cannot be a member of another political party if you're a member of Advance. So this is the interesting thing. Rupert's at 60,000 members, he calls it. We need to see, and Ben's at about 40 odd at the moment. But it's still not enough to win the vote.
No, it's not. I agree.
But also Corbyn had loads of members, didn't he? And membership. And
it doesn't necessarily translate.
It doesn't always translate, does it?
But there is something. What I think Rupert Lowe has tapped into is straight talking. Whether you think it's right or wrong, practical or impractical, expensive or not, the mass deportations thing and all that. What people have been sick of, I think, with politicians is their dancing around issues.
Yeah. I think the soundbite
and the yes but, no but, and all that. I think people are absolutely sick and tired of that, and they're prepared to buy into absolutes in this particular instance because it's clear cut. Whether it's real and when Rupert says mass deportations and all that stuff, I personally have reservations about some of that, but I think people like the fact it's direct, it's unequivocal. This is what I think. That's it.
It's like when you watch that.
Like that.
Have you ever seen the interview with Andrew Neil and Angela Rayner asking about corporations? And she just, she doesn't know. And he actually said, "You don't know, do you? You just don't know."
And this is the point that Rupert's making. It's one which I've been talking about for a long time as well. Is that we want a panel of experts. That forget politicians. Rupert tweeted. He said, "Party politics is dead." That's the phrase that he used. He was saying, "Look, if you want somebody in charge of the exchequer, they've got to know about finance. You want somebody doing international trade, they've got to understand it. And somebody about health, but understand how the health service works."
I completely agree. Well, it's not unlike the music industry where you have, I think it was EMI hired the services of the ex-CEO of Still It Bang. So that's the same kind of nonsense. It's the same kind of thing. In music, you want people who understand the front line, who understand how the business works, how royalties work, and all that stuff. And in politics, as you say, if you want somebody in charge of the exchequer, you want somebody who's got a grasp of mathematics and a grasp of industry and a grasp of.
Some of these politicians have never had jobs, have they? They come out at you. Yeah, they start working for a political party, but they've never actually gone into the workplace, had to make the books balance, understand how the machine works, and they and it comes across when they come into power. They're not particularly adept.
Well, I think back in the day, Parliament didn't start sitting until 2:30 because everybody in Parliament had a job in the morning.
Yes.
Paper rounds.
I think you have to understand how things work. The other thing that people always say about politicians, they use it as a sort of curse word about U-turns. Now, I don't, and Starmer's on his 14th, 15th, depending on how you're counting, especially with the local elections now coming back in May. The reality is if there's new evidence or they've got something wrong, a U-turn's a good thing, isn't it?
Exactly. I agree. I absolutely
I don't think there's anything wrong with changing.
Trying to find a politician that will say, I was wrong.
Yeah. It's like the Fonz, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that is true.
It's almost impossible, and I completely agree with you, Andrew. If suddenly new facts emerge, just as in a trial, if new facts emerge, you have a retrial, and they're let off. You don't insist on them remaining guilty just because you decided it.
No, you're absolutely right. And the other crazy thing is in people's manifesto where they don't tell the truth. Let me put it that way. Like the wonderful lie about we're not going to increase taxes on ordinary working people, well, whoever they are. We're all working on that sort of basis. But you clearly have increased taxes. You've got your national insurance. There's a 2p hike they've just done on dividends and so on and so forth.
Look at the nonsense going on in New York. Originally, it was putting up the taxes of billionaires, although I actually think that is completely wrong anyway. But initially, it was just putting up the taxes for billionaires. One of the first free grocery shops in New York closed down yesterday. And now this idiot is putting taxes up on everybody. And they're talking about a leaving tax. If you want to leave New York, they're talking about a tax that you have to pay before you can leave. It is. Well, Margaret Thatcher was right. I'm not. There are some things about Margaret Thatcher I didn't like, but one thing she said is true. Socialism is great until you run out of other people's money.
Well, that's what they say. Democracy is flawed, but it's better than all the alternatives.
Absolutely,
that's true.
And that's a Churchill thing, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think exactly.
I mean, you publicly post with your critiques about politicians prioritising certain religious observances over things like Shrove Tuesday. Have you ever been tempted yourself to get into the front line of politics?
We have been asked.
We've been
asked by 3 separate parties.
Yeah.
And
which ones?
We were asked by Tories, or was it 2?
2, I think. Tories and...
Well, they split. It could be 2 Tories.
It could.
Was it 2 people from the Tories? And I can't remember now. Anyway, we were at Westminster.
Yeah.
And this lady just came up. Have you ever thought of standing? And I felt like saying, well,
I'm standing right now.
Standing right now. Yeah. So we had the conversation. And then Ben, we were chatting with Ben about it.
Yeah.
And personally, I wouldn't go near it. I have a depression comes and goes, and I can't imagine anything worse for my depression than being involved in politics.
I think you have to be, you have to have a hide as thick as leather. I think.
Yeah, I'm just not.
That's one of the things that struck me about Ben. He struck me as just too nice for that stuff.
Maybe that's the side we saw.
That might be the side we saw. Maybe he can be a complete swine, when it comes to decision making and stuff. I don't know Ben that well, but he struck me as such a nice guy, such a sweet-natured person, basically. And I don't get that feeling. I might be mistaken, but I don't get that feeling from Nigel Farage, for instance.
Well, we've met Nigel a few times,
before he got into frontline politics,
yes,
he was great.
Yeah, we had dinner with him. I met him a few times. He's very good company.
Yeah.
But would I vote for reform? No, I wouldn't.
Well, it's the same with Tony Blair. I saw Tony Blair speak a few years ago, and he was brilliant. He was really, 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 really good, and I liked him. It's only now that I realise what he's actually like.
But the reality is, even beneath all that, I know lots of people have said the same thing. Lots of people who would be great doing public service, but they say they can't suffer the slings and arrows. And everybody's got everybody's got emotions. If you prick me, do I not bleed? If you tickle me, do I not laugh? In between all of that sort of stuff, there are people with slightly thicker skins. And I think to be a politician now you have to have the incredibly thick skin, because not everybody's going to love you. In fact, most people, you're going to be Marmite. Some people are going to absolutely hate you, and others may like you, but you'll get blamed for everything. But also, what is abhorrent now, it's not just the verbal attacks, it's the physical attacks where people have been murdered as well. That's got to be wrong.
Yeah, well, whatever you think of a politician, you shouldn't be threatening them, chasing them down the street, banging on their door. Or you just shouldn't.
Yeah,
that's crossing the line.
There was talk about Jeremy Clarkson, and there still is talk about Jeremy Clarkson joining Restore.
Yes,
and I think if I was his doctor, if I was Jeremy's doctor, I would say don't.
Yeah,
I would say, look after your heart, look after your health. Do not get into politics.
Also, he's got a lovely farm,
and he's got a lovely farm, and it'll drag him away from the farm. And I think it would spoil him, actually. Yeah,
I think you're right. Well, Rupert's got a lovely farm. We saw that video with him on the farm.
Yes, I know. He's quite a successful farmer, actually, isn't he?
Well, what I love about that sort of side is he's donated his MP salary because he said, "Well, I don't need it."
Yeah, that's right. It's like with Trump. What I find interesting about Trump's not taking a salary. Now, you can say that doesn't matter because he's already a billionaire or millionaire, whatever it is. But that isn't the point. There are plenty of people in Congress and in the House of Republicans, the Senate, who are creaming it, who come in worth, their annual worth is $200,000, and they leave and they're worth 20 million.
Yeah.
So so just because he's wealthy doesn't mean to say he has to give his money away. It's indicative to me of an attitude.
Oh, absolutely. But it also shouldn't be a barrier to entry. And this is why, if you're looking for the best people, I think we want to encourage people to come on because they are the best people, but not because they're career politicians, but because they're best for the job.
Well, I think Cameron was a SPAD, wasn't he? He was a special advisor. So I think, as Fred said, a lot of these people have just gone through the system. Yes. In the same way, I've got a friend from school, and he was at school, then he took the teacher's exam, and he became a teacher. So he's been within the teaching profession his entire life. Yeah. And some politicians are kind of like that, I think. They just stay in the system.
And it's completely wrong. And this whole thing about whipping, and from a completely different point of view, your eyes lit up then, we'll have none of that.
Exactly.
But what people don't understand is how it works within Parliament. Is that you don't really have a chance to have a voice. You get the carrot or the stick. I mean, if you don't abide by the whip's authority and command, you'll get nasty phone calls and various other things. But also you can get the carrot. You get all sorts of promotions and people talking. I did a regular show with Esther and Phil, the two serving it, and they were sort of telling me about the people got tickets as long as they complied and so on and so forth. So there are no principles on that sort of basis. It's a party line.
It is. It's true, but this is true. I was reading a thing about Hollywood in the early days, and every actor that was even remotely in the line for an Oscar went out. They took adverts out in newspapers. They sent gifts to the judges. It's every area of life. Sadly, politics impinges on all of us because that's the way it is. And obviously, it's not true of Hollywood and the movie industry, but the sense is still the same, which is there's no real, people don't let the system decide. They decide to skew the system in some way or another. And this particular actor I was studying, and he was just not doing anything. He was up for an Oscar and wasn't doing anything. And he met somebody, I don't know who it was, another actor, and this guy said, well, why aren't you doing adverts? He said, what do you mean I'm doing adverts? You've got to put adverts out. You've got to buy some gifts and start handing them around. And that's how it works. That's kind of how it works.
It must be also the case for politicians when you get into the front bench. You must get a knock on the door and the MOD walks in,
absolutely,
or the representative of the Bank of England, and you suddenly realise actually you really don't have much of a say in a lot of this because it's all predetermined.
Well,
that must happen.
It's the blob. It's the blob. If you believe the blob, the civil service and all that kind of that, and it's the same in America. I'm sure you get into the White House and suddenly the top brass move in and tell you what you're going to do in Ukraine, tell them what you're going to do in the Middle East.
Because these people are there forever. They just come and go.
And I remember years ago I was watching what's his name, John Knott, who was the defense secretary at the time. He was being questioned. Robin Day, I think. And Robin Day said to him, well, you're just a here today, gone tomorrow kind of fellow, aren't you? And John Knott walked out.
Yes, now he's gone. So he was right.
So he proved it
Speaking
right.
of which, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your music. That's good. Okay. I've heard of that. It's not bad, actually. And I promise I won't mention I'm Too Sexy too many times.
Okay. All right.
Okay, don't touch that dial.